Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Crystal Turner, and we're talking about relationships today and uh, the fears that can come with relationship. We're going to talk about a particular fear. I really think that most people, if not all people, have been impacted in some of their relationships, and that has caused some level of fear. We have relationships that are truly a blessing to us, that are really purposeful. Well, all of relationships are purposeful, but we embrace some relationships because they feel so good and because they've offered us really good experiences and they're positive. They're relationships that you could trust. But then there are the relationships that you could have had that were harmful or were challenging. You could still be in those challenging relationships, but especially those relationships early on, they set the foundation for other relationships that will come. And oftentimes those hard relationships that we've had in our youth or our younger years, even if those relationships go away, if we haven't dealt with the impact of those relationships, we keep experiencing some level of that type of relationship in the relationships that come in our future, even coming into our adult life. So that's why this is important, to really think about how relationships impact you. And we're going to talk about one particular type of relationship or fear in relationship. And that's the fear of being rejected, the fear of rejection. So I'm going to put some definition around this more, because the fear of rejection is one way to say it. For some people, it could be the fear of not being acknowledged. It could be the fear of being shunned or literally rejected. It could be the fear of abandonment or having had experienced abandonment. It could be the fear of being overlooked and not protected in a way, in those ways. So this is something that really, especially in our early years, primarily in our early years, when you've dealt with rejection, this really shows up if it's not dealt with. So first of all, if you are someone who's dealt with rejection, I really want you to put in the comments a blue heart if you have experienced some form of rejection and you can already resonate with what I'm saying. I think when we deal with rejection, it's huge, because by nature, the human person, let's just talk about the human person, the human being. Community is important. If you really think about cultures where there's a large sense of community, tends to be less mental health issues, especially suicide, as opposed to a culture where it's very individualistic and everyone is more so doing things on their own. It has been shown that those suicide rates tend to be higher, and the levels of stress that people carry tend to be more enormous. In our culture here in America, I think because we're in a culture that is individualistic, the longer generationally we are in this type of culture, it tends to impact many people more, and you start to transition into that type of way of living. And I think this is one of the things that impacts many people today, even if you are someone who comes from a background where culture and connection is big. Because it depends on now how things are being manifested in your current family or in the family you were raised in, how that might have shifted because of the disconnection from culture and those practices and those values. So when we are coming from a place of having dealt with some type of rejection or being overlooked, not being acknowledged, not feeling like you were valued, what tends to happen to many people is you crave this and you long for it. You want to have this experience because that would actually be natural. It would be natural, and especially as a child, that you have caregivers who naturally provide this, because we're talking about foundations of protection. So protection isn't just physical, it's also the emotional protection that we especially need, and we seek, because it should be a part of your experience. But if you haven't had that, you tend to seek it more. And I think that for many people, when you tend to seek something that hasn't been there that should have, especially when you haven't had the resources, the people around to help you heal that, you might look for it in an even more intense way. I could even say in a more desperate way because you're longing for it so much. And when we are longing for something in this way and there's a desperate energy there, then you could be open to much more. You might widen the spectrum of what you're willing to have come your way for the purpose of trying to get some of that thing that you never received in the way that was nurturing to you. As opposed to when you've received it, you're satisfied, and your gate to receive this doesn't have to be so wide that so much gets filtered to you. It could be smaller because you're already receiving it, and foundationally you have a foundation centered around acceptance that you're not longing for. So there's this self-acceptance, first of all, that you tend to develop when you've come from a background of people who have supported you and been inclusive of you and been supportive of you in that way. But when we're not, then we have this wider gate because we're wanting it so much and we haven't seen it. So you could be someone who is what is the word? I guess settling is the word. Settling, so you're opening up your gate wider to allow more to come in to accept. And then when these things come, especially even if it doesn't look completely like what you wanted, but there's some element in there of some type of acceptance, then you settle for something because of that small bit of a desire being met, but it may come with so many other issues that can be troublesome, that can be harmful too. But when you're mistreated by not getting that emotional nurturing, then you tend to desire that thing so much that your eyes are closed to the other things, because even if you're receiving a little bit of what you didn't get, you crave that so much, all your attention is there. And so the full picture isn't necessarily seen, or we sacrifice, so that we can have a little bit of this thing. So that's one thing. You end up allowing so many more relationships to come your way that maybe you wouldn't have had you had this experience of being accepted early on. You allow many more of these relationships to come to you, and many of them aren't completely the right match for taking care of your whole person, because it's given a little bit of something that you've longed for so long and didn't get foundationally. So that's one thing. Secondly, you end up doing things like when you're not accepted, and that's something that you're dealing with foundationally, and you haven't received that, then there can be this self-acceptance that also is not there. This rejection of yourself, or the way that you see yourself, may have gotten altered through that process, and that can look like thinking that you're not worthy of something. You may even ask yourself, what's wrong with me? And so you may walk through life asking this type of mantra of a question: what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Deep down, because you've possibly determined that if people early on didn't show you acceptance, that it was for something that was wrong with you. You may have even been told something negative about yourself that you've really centered in and started to believe. But when you're walking in life and through life, and when you have these relationships that keep coming because the gate is so wide, and some of those relationships fall through, or you end up finding that you get hurt in those relationships, then that question may come up more and may get louder. What is wrong with me? What is it that I've done? Why can't I find someone who values me? And I think the thing with this is because there has to be a level of self-value. When we are valuing ourselves, then we don't tolerate certain situations that show that those people don't value you. But all of this kind of gets skewed when you don't have the foundation, because of the dynamics that happen early on when you're when you're coming to understand who you are and create a definition of yourself for yourself. When early on this element is missing, it can cause these imbalances. And so you have your gate open wider, that brings in relationships that can be harmful. You end up not having the most important relationship where you are seen valued, and that's your own personal view of yourself. And then I do think that you're also in situations where you find that you get hurt more, and you might have this this idea that everyone is hurting you. Sometimes we could say that this is like a victimhood type of mentality. And when you are in these situations, when you don't value yourself, so that means that because you don't value yourself, people tend to be able to do a bit more to you than what you would allow if you really, had that value. And then you're allowing these extra relationships to come in your life that shouldn't be there in the first place. This is a recipe for the possibility of being hurt. This is a recipe for the possibility of, being disappointed, over and over again, until we learn the lesson, of the importance of self-love. And, we can't run from this. It's something that you will keep having these experiences that hurt so deeply, until you first deal with getting to be acquainted with yourself, so that you create a level of admiration and self-respect and dignity for self that allows you to now have this as your foundation. And I'm outside gardening. I can't move my camera, but I'm trying to plant flowers outside because it is a really pretty day. And I do think that like horticulture and being out in nature, it offers a lot. First of all, it's very relaxing to sit and look at like beautiful colors, beautiful flowers, beautiful colors, to put your hands in dirt. I bought me some gardening gloves, but I'm not using them because there's benefits in putting your hands in soil that has all types of enzymes and different nutrients within the soil that absorb into our body when we come out and we allow our hands to be in it, or you're walking on the dirt. Those things are helpful, but I'm getting off track. What I love about nature and being outside is I think it teaches so much. And even in what we're talking about today, I want to use an example of an analogy that we can use from nature that can go right hand in hand with your experiences that you're having when you're dealing with this fear of rejection, because you may have come from that and it may be a wound that really is not healed and hurts so much. But in nature, when we see this is beautiful. That's my opinion, but you understand what I'm saying. Usually in nature, you see various colors, you see green, you see the blue sky, the blue ocean. You can see beautiful things in nature. And when we talk about gardening and planting these flowers that I'm planting, one thing about flowers and this process that I know we can learn from is that when we plant flowers and when we see flowers in the ground, there's also weeds that can come up around the flowers. They can come out strong. And if you've never paid attention, when you don't water and nurture the beautiful flowers, they will end up dying. But what I've noticed is that the weeds will grow even more. They will get stronger. The roots will get deeper. They will grow taller, and they can overtake the whole bed of flowers that were there when you're not nurturing the flowers, the beautiful flowers. And I want to pose this to you because regardless of who you are watching, you are a beautiful flower. Not meaning that depending on who you are, that you're soft, but you are beautiful and radiant, and the light, which is the sun, is what nourishes you, along with feeding yourself the water as a nutrient. So giving yourself your own nutrients, the nutrients of this world, of nature, the natural ways to nourish yourself can be very impactful to your growth. It is what is required for your growth. And when you don't nurture yourself, you don't care for yourself, you don't nourish yourself with the light, and you don't nourish yourself with the nutrients of the water, you die. There's a part of you that dies. But what we can also recognize is that if you allow those weeds to come in, those things that shouldn't really be there, but they come, but we have to be able to pull those up from the root right away, so that they don't get embedded and take up all of your nutrients and grow even when you're dying. Really toxic people that you may have had in your life, when you're hurt and you're dying, they don't necessarily die with you. They grow stronger. They keep thriving, and some of them will thrive off of the appearance of you dying. So when you allow people to take root in your environment, the environment of your mind, your spirit, your body, when you allow other toxic people to take root in your environment, your bed, your place where you have the ability to expand and grow and become more beautiful, when you allow the toxic people to come and take root and suck all of the energy that could be coming to you, and they take it from you, then you die. And this may not be this in most situations. This is not literal. This is not a physical death. It is emotional, and it could be spiritually. You die. You no longer care for yourself. It can also be physically, because you could be so beat down from these people who you may be valuing more than yourself that you don't even take care of yourself because you feel bad about this. But it is important to understand that it takes us to nourish ourselves, that we look to ourselves to nourish ourselves. Look to nature, to the Creator, for that nourishment. And the Creator is in everything natural, it's in everything, actually. So looking for all things good, all things loving, all things beautiful as it pertains to you, and letting that be also the nourishment that you're giving to your environment, because it will then take root, and it's stronger, and it's more beautiful, and it grows more abundantly, and it is a better thing to look at. When you walk somewhere and you see a beautiful bed of flowers, most people take notice to something like that. When you walk past something and it's all these weeds, and the analogy of the weeds is something toxic, no one usually pays attention to that much, but it's the beautiful bed of flowers that people will look at. And so when you're nurturing yourself, you are becoming more radiant, you're becoming more, you're growing, you're spreading, and that becomes what people can see in you. But first, you want to see this in you by nurturing yourself and seeing that you deserve the nurturing. You are valuable where you deserve to be nurtured. And we have to learn this thing. Even though as a child, yes, it is important that you have people who nurture you, and some of you may not have. But as adults, we do get the opportunity to learn to nurture ourselves. If you haven't received the nurturing, it may take learning it, and it can be learned. That's the thing, you can learn. But it is the nurturing that we are going to have to give to ourselves to be able to then see us develop and continue to grow and expand in this beautiful way. That's what I want to leave with you today. You have the ability to be a beautiful bed of flowers with a beautiful environment of just like richness around you. And I would love for you to leave in the comments if you're willing to do that for yourself by putting a brown heart to let me know that you're willing to do this for yourself, to start this process, or even if it is something that you desire to do. You might not know how yet, but you have the desire to nourish yourself so that you can see yourself grow more beautiful, more radiant. The weeds won't even be, there won't be space for the toxic people, the toxic experiences. There will not be room, because you'll be so in love with the abundance of the radiance that you are now experiencing. You won't even want to entertain or have the thought to entertain all of the toxicity that may have been around before. So that's what I'm leaving with you today. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel. I have a goal right now of getting to 500 subscribers. I think I have 137 subscribers right now, but I really am on a mission to spread the word of healing holistically from our experiences, because when we do, we show up different mind, body, and spirit. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.